rebuilding America together. This is the Jeff Santos Show.
Welcome back. It is indeed the Jeff Santos Show. 844-3-SANTOS, the phone number to join us. Our next guest comes to us from the great city of Seattle, which is undergoing a lot of changes in the Pacific Northwest. No longer just a grunge town with a lot of musicians. It has become a very wealthy city with a lot of folks working in the high-tech area, particularly in and around Microsoft. And here to talk about it is our good friend, a regular here every Tuesday, a great journalist, an independent journalist working for a lot of different folks. Our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield joins us. Happy New Year, Mark.
Happy New Year to you and everyone on the radio network. Good to speak to you from Seattle, where we got a little tiny bit of snow over the weekend. It lasted about a half hour, so that was our winter snow in Seattle. As I said before, it's about as rare as a good New York pizza here. So,
well, we all like good New York pizza, that's for sure. And we're used to snow here in the Northeast, and we're anticipating a bigger storm, or two, or three. Hopefully not as much as last year. I introduced it that way because we have an email or text exchange, Mark and I, and Mark talked about the idea of how the rent, or as our friend in New York City, the rent is too damn high. And that is really shocking to those who are from New York or Boston or San Francisco or some of the more wealthy places that you look at. Would think of movie stars and Wall Street folks and so on and so forth. But Seattle, once the haven where I know Nirvana and the band, making a few bucks here and there, lived in some really cool places in Seattle, no longer the case. So tell me what has happened and what can be done about the high rents, the condos that have gone up all across the city of Seattle, my friend.
Well, Jeff, I think people in Seattle are sort of in a quandary, including our own city government and the county commissioners from Martin Luther King Jr. County, because they've had to declare a civil emergency due to the increase in homelessness. There's over 10,000 people without permanent residence in Martin Luther King Jr. County, which includes Seattle and the local metropolitan area. So the question is on everybody's mind. It's on the mind of our socialist city council member, Kshama Sawant, who's been pushing for some form of rent control in Seattle. But unfortunately, in order to do that, the city council would have to do an end run around the Washington State Legislature, which has banned any form of rent control in the state. So a lot of folks are here really worried about what's happening to the culture. And yes, they are sort of worried that Seattle may become sort of Hollywoodified or Bay Area-ified, where it's an unaffordable place for people to live. It's rapidly becoming that. And it has had an effect on the local music industry, on the artist community. There's a lot of struggling independent actors, musicians, artists in Seattle who just are finding it too expensive to live here anymore. So a lot of them are moving to outlying areas. Meanwhile, the corporations are investing billions of dollars in Seattle. The construction crane is considered the official city bird because there's more construction cranes in Seattle per capita than any place else in the country right now. And nobody really knows what to do. The activists have been marching in the streets and calling for some kind of affordable housing programs. The county and the city have come up with some emergency funds to try to create those new shelters, but they're way, way behind the curve. And it's not clear whether they're ever actually going to be able to catch up and deal with this problem as more and more people are displaced by rents going up, 100% or more. It's just crazy. Like I said in my recent Capitol Hill Times column, people look back to the good old days of inexpensive Seattle, which was approximately about 24 months ago.
Yeah, that's not exactly like a long time.
Yeah.
It's not like when black and white TV, dominated the landscape. Talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. I mean, we did in this part of the country in New York and Boston had rent control. Is that something that is being brought up by your city councilors or your mayor?
Yes, but because of the prohibition by the state legislature, a real rent control is not possible in Seattle. So it has to be done through other kinds of tax incentives. It has to be done through some kinds of regulation, which, of course, the real estate developers, don't like that idea, and their lobbyists especially don't like that idea. There was a debate between our local progressive city council member, Nick Licata, who unfortunately is retiring this year, along with Jim McDermott, actually.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, too, when we get a chance. Great advocates for single-payer and anti-war and so forth. I mean, is there any hope that, that the federal government, can step in? What does Governor Inslee think about this? What are you hearing from your top officials politically in the state and in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Governor Inslee and the state legislature have their hands full with this contempt of court finding by the state Supreme Court because of their lack of funding for public education. So we have a new legislative session that'll be starting on January 11th. There are continual editorials in all over the area about the lack of movement on this issue by the state legislature and the governor. They refuse to call a special session, so they're waiting until January 11th to even consider this problem. Meanwhile, $100,000 are accruing every day as a fine against the state legislature from the state Supreme Court because our state constitution requires adequate funding for public education, and the state Supreme Court has found that the funding process, the levy ballot issues, which have to be passed in each district to raise money for the public schools, is, quote, unconstitutional, according to our own superintendent of public instruction. So I think Governor Inslee has some other things on his mind right now. And in terms of, the rent control issue, you have, like I said, folks like Nick Licata, one of our most progressive activist city council members of all time. He's been there forever. He's retiring, so we're losing a good advocacy voice for the poor and disenfranchised in Seattle there. Kshama Sawant and Mike O'Brien, two other council members, are really pushing on this issue. The mayor, Ed Murray, has been pushing on this economic inequality issue, but I think their hands are pretty tied in a lot of ways. There's only certain things that they can do, and meanwhile, the real estate developers consider $1,000 200 square foot micro units as a, quote, consumer choice that, people shouldn't be prohibited from enjoying. That's what they want. And, so there's a situation in Seattle. The real estate developers and the major corporations, Amazon has taken over so much real estate in Seattle that you can't avoid the Amazon logo no matter where you go in downtown Seattle. They have so many buildings that they're either renting or building right now.
Let me stop you there. What are they doing in terms of providing jobs for those in Seattle, whether these are folks who are working poor, whether they're working class, middle class? And I know that they import a lot of people from, all parts of the country. I mean, obviously they're a well-known company, and they are putting money into a lot of different parts of their operation. But are they hiring people from Seattle or from the metropolitan area in King County?
Well, the IT and the biomed companies, which are really, really busy in Seattle right now in terms of development, are actually hiring a lot of folks from South Asia. And that's been a big influx of software engineers and technicians from that part of the world. But in terms of the local economy, well, Amazon has actually been criticized in national media, including an article in the New York Times in terms of some of their employment practices. So they're under some pressure here. But at the same time, I don't see, a lot of money being put into affordable housing projects or jobs programs by these corporations. It's pretty much a, winner-take-all, profit motive economic boom right now. And I think what some of us are worried about is what happens when the real estate and the IT gold rush boom busts. Because Seattle's always had a cycle of boom and bust. We saw that happen with the .com boom and bust. We've seen it happen in the aerospace industry over and over. So people are worried about what's going to happen when you have